Welcome to the November 2008 edition of Practitioner's Monthly Video Digest. This 10-part series of continuing professional education modules is designed to keep you current and well-informed on the profession's latest developments.
How many of you have quality control responsibilities for your practice? All right, most of the hands went up. What's the right answer to that question? It's kind of a trick question, right? Everybody has quality control responsibilities for your practice. Some of you are designated as maybe a quality assurance partner or an A&A partner or something like that. And that's most of you. How many of you have actually read, prior to this session, SQCS 7? Anybody? Just one or two? All right. It's not Moby Dick or something. Okay, it might be just as slow actually. You can get through it a little quicker, but it actually doesn't take very long to read. We're going to recap some of that as we go through here. Although I want to emphasize that this session is not a substitute for becoming familiar with the actual language in that standard. Our objectives for what we're going to do today, as we say up here, it says identify the changes to the elements of quality control resulting from SQCS number 7, a firm's system of quality control. The way we're going to do that in this session is I'll take you through the major elements of SQCS 7 so you can kind of have a feel for what's there. If I had to outline what my real objective is for everyone in this room, it would be that when you walk out of the room, you have some idea of what the whole thing's about, okay? What it's trying to do, how it's different from the previous quality control standards that we have, at least in the major ways that it is, and maybe some idea of what you've got to do in your own practice coming up. So we're going to try to address those broad objectives as we go through this. First of all, as we start out, SQCS 7, a firm system of quality control, the objective, and this means the objective of the standard itself is what this is talking about, to provide reasonable assurance, there's that auditor language, right? That the firm and its personnel comply with professional standards and applicable regulatory and legal requirements, and that the firm or engagement partners issue appropriate audit reports. That's pretty broad, but in essence, the way I like to think about the quality control standards as it relates to the ICPA is it's kind of, for our profession, these are the entity level controls, right? We've all been thinking about controls and using that term a little bit more this last year with the risk assessment standards. In effect, SQCS 7 encompasses what the entity level controls are for an individual audit firm. Along with that, one more parallel to that analogy, sometimes when I work with auditors and they come to me and they say, when it comes to entity level controls at a company, now we're not talking about firms anymore, it's just a regular commercial company, they're an audit client, they say, how do I know what's really important? How do I know what I care about? I've got this checklist, and PPC's got a form, and I could read, I can read COSO or COSO Lite or something like that, and I'll often tell them, all that stuff's great, but all you're really trying to get at is to say, look, given the nature of this company and what they do and how big, what are the things they should be doing to make sure that their financial statements are right, and that they have a culture to do that, and it's that judgment. When it comes to the application of SQCS 7 to our firms, it's really that same kind of mentality, and they take pains to say that in the standard. So there are a lot of requirements. Nearly all of the requirements in here are shoulds. You remember the SAS 102 on should, presumptively mandatory requirements, all right, is what we're going to be going through. There are a few you are required to and musts, which I'll try to point out at the beginning. Most of those relate to the fact that you need to have a system of quality control at all right? You can't not have one. But as we go through, remember to think about your practice. And I'm going to give some examples as we go through. There's some good documents out there that I'm going to point you to, examples of maybe specific policies that you might see at a firm. Some of those are going to fit your practice, and some of them are not. If they don't, it's not a tragedy, right? Because all we're trying to say for your practice is, what is the overall broad objective, and what do I actually need to do? And you have some latitude in the standards about how you apply any of these things to your practice. All right, some details about the standard itself before we jump into what it's all about. It was issued in October 2007. It's been out there a little while, right? About a year. It's hard for me to think about another standard recently that's been as universally ignored, maybe, as SQCS 7. just no one has paid any attention to this in the last year. So if you're sitting here in the room thinking, I'm glad they have a session because I don't even know what this is, you are not alone, all right? The whole industry is kind of in that boat, which I'm glad people are starting to pay attention to it now because it is actually effective, right, for a firm system of quality control for its accounting and auditing practice. That's going to be significant as of January 1st, 2009. So you've got basically, the rest of 2007 and then 2008 to complete your implementation of this as we go through. Because they needs to be effective for your practice as of January 1st, 2009. Or in other words, peer reviews, for example, that encompass a period after January 1st, 2009 will have the expectation that these policies and procedures were in place after this period. Some of the implementation might take a little while, as we'll point out when we talk about monitoring, things like that. So it's not going to be a matter of taking the next 12 or 13 months to draft a document that you roll out to the whole firm on December 31st, 2008 and say, okay, here it is, here's our new practice or quality control standard. There may be some things that need to be in place a little while before that, all right, in order to ascertain that it's actually effective. And so one of the value-added things you can be doing in this session is just kind of making notes for your own practice and saying, okay, for this particular element or for this particular element, how much of a change do we need and realistically, when do we need to start doing that? Okay. And then this second bullet point is just saying that in the development of this, consideration was given to the international quality control standards. There were some comment letters, obviously, that thought that we went maybe a little too far with ours, and in some cases it's a little more robust maybe than the international standard is, but it incorporates the same broad principles, which should be a familiar theme to everyone in our profession, right? Because whether it's on the audit side or the quality control side or even the gap side now, as we were talking about, everything is kind of coming together that way.